This is the Griffin Realty Group Ask-A-Griffin podcast, episode number 80. We continue in our agent plan with the question, are you anticipating closing challenges and providing solutions? Are you a home seller or home buyer who has questions about selling or buying residential property? Or maybe you're an agent who needs a plan, but you just can't seem to find an easy way to get your answers or guidance? Well, then, hey, you are definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of The Griffin and the host of the Ask-A-Griffin podcast. And to help you take immediate action to get started in the right direction, if you need to sell or buy property right now or in the near future, or you want a real estate agent plan, you can take advantage of all our free step-by-step guides that are waiting for you at griffincourses.com, Griffin courses.com. Okay, let's get started. So we continue in this agent plan, and we're really in the final throes of what's happening with the closing process, right? And so the question on the table to an agent who's taking their client through the closing process is, are you, the agent, anticipating closing challenges and providing solutions? So the first point here is that you can assume, if you've been in this business even for one closing at this moment, if you haven't, you can assume that all closings will have challenges. And you might have some downright real threats to the deal. So if you just assume that, it sets your mindset up to be aware and be on your game and be out in front of it, to really anticipate that intuitive sense that says, I didn't like what that home inspector had to say about these items. I better be paying close attention to it. And this is no matter what side you're anticipating representing in the future, sellers, buyers, because you'll do both most likely. You know, that's a moment, for example, when a home inspection happens. These home inspections are super uber detail oriented. They want to make sure that they cover themselves from lawsuits, so they are going to get nitpicky. And if they discover something that was unforeseen even by the seller, it was a hidden item, there are going to be challenges. And the most likely reaction is everybody panics. Because we all tend to, when we're in a massive emotional transaction, such as selling a house, what happens is we tend to over-exaggerate. We get caught up in these cognitive distortions that, oh my gosh, this beam is compromised. The house is going to fall down. No, it's not. It hasn't for 200 years since it's been sitting here in Boston. But does it need to be shored up? Does it need to be fixed? Yes, right? So you see what I'm saying? That's a real deal. The other thing is you can get third parties involved, such as attorneys, title companies, and something can come up. It can be a title defect. It can be a challenge. We just had one deal like that. I don't know that the property is sellable. We're trying to sell an old church, and it turns out that the church doesn't own what it thinks it owns. And so now all of a sudden there's really no parking. There's land out back that's owned by the town. So all of a sudden this property is on a postage stamp, and it is what it is. Right? So there may be no solution in that case. But of course, we're going to look for one. We might just have to anticipate, hey, we might only be able to sell the building as a church as it is, period, paragraph. And we have to figure out, can they park there because we were tied up by a developer? So you see, those are real deal challenges that I'm talking about right now in my own business. The second point is here, I'm telling you about different parties that get introduced during a closing process. So what's really incredible, if you think about a listing, let's just pretend for a second you're a listing agent and you've listed the property. Well, there's obviously a lot to put together the digital footprint and to syndicate it out there to the MLS, to push it around with open houses and your own marketing and showings. And there's a long process just to make a market for that property. And then once everybody can agree to that, now, all of a sudden, what's happened is we're all locked up in these critical dates and deadlines that get accordioned, he said, into a very small time frame. And we introduce all these new parties. Home inspector comes in for the first time. And if there are other inspectors that are needed, then they get introduced. Now we have all parties, buyer, agent, and seller agent coming together. We have the buyer involved now. We have typically attorneys on both sides involved in the state of Massachusetts and other states. For example, Florida, there might be a title company involved. So there are all of these people that need orchestration for these very tight time frames. So we, as the agent, if you want to close your deal and you want to keep everybody on track, you have to assume orchestration. You have to become the orchestra leader of all these people and make sure they're on track. And I know a lot of you will be sort of that shrinking violet mindset. Well, they're attorneys. So what? Attorneys are humans too. Yes, they have their expertise. Yes, they spent a lot of time becoming an expert at that and getting licensed. But that doesn't mean they're going to stay on time. That doesn't mean they're organized. Because oftentimes in the state of Massachusetts, where it is an attorney state, attorneys start to make up their own rules. Well, we're extending it because why? Why? See, we don't accept that because we have a seller and we have a buyer that want to close in a certain period of time. If there are legitimate reasons why extensions are needed, that's great. But if it's because people just didn't get the work done, well, then we probably didn't do the best job of anticipating that we had an unorganized attorney, that we had a difficult post-home inspection situation that nobody was resolving. In other words, I know of one right now where somebody needed a door replaced and nobody went to think and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't wait till the walkthrough day, meaning the day of the closing or the day before, to see if this work was done. We should have anticipated that this could become a problem. So it's just being aware that when you lock into the details of a closing, that there is going to be a lot that could go wrong because there are so many details that are under such a time pressure. The third point here is by starting to anticipate the precise problems, you can begin to offer clear solutions. So let me give you an example. I'll go back to where I've had some issues like this, where the things that scare people typically the most, water issues. Water can scare anybody. And why is there water in the house? Is it leaking? Is it coming through the roof? And especially foundational water leakage can be a big issue. High water tables on Cape Cod, for example, can scare people. So there are a lot of issues like that can become a problem. But if you begin to anticipate them, especially when you're showing the property and you notice a sump pump, for example, well, you can begin to ask about that. You can begin to figure that out. And you can begin to ask for seller disclosures if you feel like something's off. Somebody just hasn't done enough homework as the listing agent and you're the buyer's agent. Ask, digging in deeper, even before you get locked up into a deal. I know a lot of you are in a frenzied market right now and you'll do anything to lock it up and you'll even waive home inspections. That's all dangerous stuff, right? It's all dangerous stuff because you're really buying something that if somebody really should kick the tires and understand what it is. Even if the home inspection is for informational purposes only, it's good to take a good inventory. And so let's just say, though, it's something nobody did know about. And the home inspector goes in and with their trained eye, they see something. And the question is, oh, well, there's this that needs to be upgraded and that needs to be upgraded. And all of a sudden, everybody's reeling and it feels like the deal's going to fall apart and say, well, wait a minute. Is the seller willing to compensate for these things? If yes, let's get some experts in. Okay, the furnace is at the end of its life. Do you mean it's at the end of its life in the next year? So the buyer doesn't want to buy the property because of that? Great. Let's have a specialist, a heating and cooling specialist, come in and actually give us a real estimate on replacement cost. And then the seller can choose to replace it prior to closing, or they can just reduce the price, the accepted price, by that amount. Because now we have a professional who's saying at the closing that work can be done. Money can be escrowed for that heating and cooling specialist. So there are a lot of solutions there that instead of everybody panicking, you can go look at it. Because if the buyer really wants it and the seller and the seller's agent are a little discombobulated, say, well, look, just give us an extension. We'll get a heating and cooling company in here and we'll get an estimate. And then we'll contribute. And we don't mind taking that burden on. See, so sometimes you get finger pointing in these moments. Well, they should have, and I prefer to jump in and take leadership. Because it's my client, seller, or buyer that I'm trying to serve. And so if I can participate in these solutions or even lead them, you're darn right I'm going to do it. I'm not going to wait for anybody else to solve the problem because that could lead to just more anxiety, more over-exaggeration, more fear in a blown deal. Okay? So let me go back and just say this again. We're in the closing part of the agent plan, so agents become aware of what they need to think about. So we ask it as a question. Are you anticipating closing challenges and providing solutions? And we start by saying, you can assume that all closings will have challenges. That just gets your mindset ready. Second, the orchestration of tight timeframes and people is critical. So the minute you start to get into a contract, think about those timeframes and what responsibility you have and what all the other parties to that transaction have so that you can begin to become the orchestra leader. And of course, number 3, start to anticipate. Listen closely, watch the process, anticipate the precise problems, and begin to offer clear solutions, and you will save a lot of your deals from blowing up for no reason. I'll restate it this way. A real estate closing process is a complicated orchestration of many critical dates, deadlines, and third parties such as home inspectors, mortgage brokers, and attorneys. Therefore, it's more often than not something goes wrong. So, as the orchestra leader, you must anticipate what could go wrong and be out in front of it, offering solutions to keep the closing on track. All right, now remember, you can take immediate action to get started in the right direction if you need to sell or buy property right now or in the near future, or you're maybe an agent who wants some help. All of you can go and get our free step-by-step guides at griffincourses.com. That's Griffin courses.com. Also, don't forget you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen, or find us on any of our social media channels so that you don't miss out on any insights each time we upload an episode. We'd also appreciate it, of course, if you would share our content with anyone thinking about selling or buying property or becoming a real estate agent so that they get the help that they need to be successful. Remember, though, I say at the same time, right, at the end of every podcast, remember, nobody's coming for you. Nobody's coming for you. So take action and get to work on your plan for buying or selling or becoming a successful real estate agent. And we'll see you in the next episode to help you do just that. Thanks again.